Because you are at a point in time when you are actively searching for ideas and testing out ideas and identity and developmentally appropriately, trying to differentiate yourself from your parents and testing, maybe their value system is not my value system.
Right.
And that's healthy to a point.
Welcome back to Raising Men. I'm your host, Sean Dawson. As parents, we navigate completely uncharted territory, especially these days. And I've talked a lot about how we're caught in this bizarre cultural crossfire where we're trying to reject toxic masculinity without falling into some sort of empty alternative of no masculinity at all. And lately, I think there's been a fantastic upswing in the global conversation surrounding boys and what they need to thrive. But if you look closely at who is involved and leading that dialogue, it's heavily dominated by men. But moms are in the trenches of boyhood every single day, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to leave their voices out of the broader cultural conversation on modern masculinity. So returning to the show is a phenomenal guest, a writer, a nurse, a mother of 4 boys, just like my mom, and the brilliant mind behind the On Boys podcast. Her groundbreaking book, Building Boys, Raising Great Guys in a World That Misunderstands Males, is officially hitting shelves in paperback in early August. Jennifer, welcome back to Raising Men. Now, your book has been out for a while, since 2023, I believe, and you are releasing it in paperback. Talk to me about how has it been received? What made you want to bring that into the world in the first place?
What made me want to bring it in the world in the first place was that I saw, first of all, in myself, how what I didn't understand about boys, what I didn't understand about boy culture, what I didn't understand about the world that they faced and didn't understand about male development, all interfered with effective parenting of boys, with helping boys become good men. It's really hard to do a good job at something if you don't understand the world in which you're operating.
Yeah.
If you don't, you've done business for years and years. If you're trying to launch a product, but you don't understand the market forces and the social pressures and the culture in which you are trying to build and release this product, it's not going to be a successful launch.
Right.
And I think that's really, really similar for parents. We start, especially moms, we start with this idea of who we want our boys to be. And in the beginning of my book, I say, actually, right now, a lot of us start with what we don't want. We know we don't want to raise a violent man. We don't want to raise a mass shooter. And yes, these are very, very low bars. But it speaks to all of these fears. We know that there have been a lot of men and boys in the headlines for doing some pretty horrendous things. And we're like, something's wrong there. How do I not do that?
Yeah.
It's an okay starting point. But if you don't understand all of the cultural forces, all of the male development pieces, it's very difficult to be effective. So that's initially why I wrote Building Boys, why that subtitle is In a World That Misunderstands Males. And so the book came out in 2023, and there has been an increase, I believe, in talking about boys, in talking about raising great guys, raising men. You're part of that conversation. Increased national and international conversations about boys, but I still feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding in that space. And that's a space that I hope that my book helps fill. And I have always personally felt like paperback is the best format for a book. That's my personal preference. I'm curious what yours is.
Yeah, actually, my favorite format is digital because I find, I carry my iPad around with me.
It's out in digital form as well.
And I literally have, the Library of Alexandria on that thing,
Isn't that something?
and it's amazing. And I can cross reference things. I mean, there. If I had to design that from scratch, I would. I might do it differently, but man, it is. So yeah, I hardly ever, and it's limited. It's not the kind of experience you can get from an actual physical paper copy of the book, but it also doesn't keep my wife up if I read it at night.
Very
So
important.
there, there you go. What you describe is like the difference between health and absence of sickness. And if all you were trying to do is, oh, well, I want to avoid getting the flu, I want to avoid getting cancer, and I want to avoid if that's the way you thought about your
Yes.
life, you would never necessarily do things that I mean, you might walk around wearing a mask all the time, and then you're excluding the psychological health that you need from talking to people face to face and all of those things, and that's what health is not the absence of sickness. It is something forward thinking, and it is something active, and that's what you're describing with boys. The conversation around boys has gotten pathologized
Yes.
in a way where you're just, oh well, you have to avoid becoming a school shooter. Well, of course you do. Just like you have to avoid jumping off of a cliff in order to remain healthy, but it's not sufficient.
You know, as you said that, I think it's a uniquely American approach, right? I mean, in the United States, we have had this model where health is avoiding sickness, and most of us at this point can look around and see how and why that's sort of inadequate as a healthcare system. Many of us feel
Yeah.
let down by that system or neglected by that system. And similarly, with health, there's been this look and search for it. We want a pill, we want a treatment, we want a quick and easy thing.
Yeah.
And health isn't that simple. Raising boys isn't that simple. Both are very complex endeavors and they're multifaceted, involve a lot of different pieces. But as you alluded to with health, when we pay attention to those individual determinants and to the environment, it's the difference between surviving and thriving.
Hmm. I've been doing this a lot of thinking recently about. I came upon this concept that that uh, it was a definition of suffering that I thought was really operational and really useful, which is that suffering is when your expectations don't match reality.
Oh,
And so that might be because you desire something that you can't have. And it might be because you have the mental model of the world that isn't true, right? And those things cause suffering. And what that means is that suffering is a choice, and um it can be intentional. Like, okay, I'm going to decide that I want that thing up there. I want to be at the top of that mountain. And so I'm going the fact that I am not right now at the top of the mountain versus my vision of myself on top of that mountain is suffering. And that suffering motivates me to climb upward. And that's good, right? And in a lot of cases, so not all suffering is bad, but unintentional suffering or suffering that you don't feel that you chose is, or potentially bad. And so I wonder to what extent this model is, or that way of thinking about things is about, like, really about what we need to do to build our boys into men in terms of getting them to choose their suffering. You know what I mean? As opposed to, it feels to me like a very masculine thing is identifying and being able to choose your own suffering and recognizing that is a choice, and it is something that you opt into, and it can be good and bad. What do you think about that?
there's a lot to think about there. And as you said it, I saw a very direct parallel to parents of boys, and especially moms.
Mm-hmm.
Suffering is when your expectations don't match reality. I know and have talked to so many moms who are stressed, overwhelmed, and suffering. They feel this very deeply. And part of it is their expectations don't match reality. And what I mean by that, and this is part of what I talk about in the book, what they expect of their boy is based on a misunderstanding of who boys are and how they grow and what they're capable of at different points. So, for instance, the pace of male development is different than female development. There are so many, 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 many little boys who are developmentally not ready to sit still for long periods, to write, to listen, to pay attention, to read when they are 5 years old. But if our expectation is they should be able to,
Yeah.
and they aren't, so often the parents conclude there is something wrong with the boy, and moms especially, and I don't know about dads. Sean, I'll let you answer that part because I've not been a dad. But moms especially assume I'm doing something wrong, that I can't make this kid do what he should be doing.
Oh, that is so true. When we spoke last time, my son was in a school, and all of the teachers, except for the PE teacher and the principal, were all women, including his. She was in kindergarten when we spoke last, and boy, he was having a tough time. In exactly the way that you described. And he's old for his class. He was born in January, so he's relatively old for the rest of his class. He's also much bigger than everybody, which has its own challenges associated with it. But he had this male principal that he could connect with in a different way than with his, female teachers. And I think that really helped. And that profession, there are far fewer men in education now than there were when I was growing up, for example. And I remember being young and really feeling that need to connect with, I felt the need to connect with all my teachers, but I connected with my male teachers in a different way than my female teachers. And maybe it's different as I got older. Certainly more of the teachers were men. But that seems to me that we have to deal with this culture in which the school that our boys are going to go to is, there are a lot more women than there are men, and we have to somehow figure out how to help the school realize how to work with the boy in such a way to make him thrive in that world. Like, and that happened to us. I mean, we ended up just having to work with the teachers to go, yeah, here's the deal with him. Like, I know he freaked out in this one situation, and that makes you think that he's uncontrollable, but he's really it's not that he's controllable, but you can get the result you want out of him. You just have to give him, in my boy's case, he really likes having a plan, and he really likes being able to do the thing that he's concocted in his head. So he creates his plan often just by himself on his way. Recently it's the summertime now, and so we're taking him to daycare. And he had this horrible meltdown in daycare, or in camp, not daycare, the other day, where, I mean, he was just, went off by himself and was kicking the dirt and all that stuff. He was really, really upset for a while. And, the camp counselors came to us and said, what do we do about it? How can we work with him about this? And we said, yeah, this is the way he gets when he gets frustrated that he can't do what he expected to do. And in this case, they had a Lego station, and he wanted to play in the Lego station, but they were closing the Lego station because they were moving on to something else, and he wasn't aware of that. So he'd created this plan in his head where he got to do the Lego station for a certain period of time and he got to build this particular thing and then he got to play with it in this particular way. He didn't share that plan with other people. By the way, that's part of what I need to do in order to help him thrive is, dude, you got to share your plans with people so they know, so they can help you and you can help adjust your plan based on what other people's plans are.
Yes.
But once they understood, oh, this is really about him just being able to do the thing that he wants to do. And then they can help him with that. They can say, hey, what is your plan? What do you want to do here? Oh, well, that's not going to work. We're going to do it. How about we do this instead? And then it was totally smooth and it was perfect. And, I think we think about these institutions or these constructs. The school is this monolithic thing that is unchangeable. And this is just the way things are, and we're going to have to work with it. And to some extent that's true. And that's a healthy attitude, but there's another side of that tension, which is, no, you don't really have to, you don't have to let it impose on you. You don't have to change yourself for that unnecessarily. And I think that was an important thing. That's something that has helped us really succeed in some ways. And, it's not like we're fully successful there. But I mean, let me ask you this. It seems to me that being the mother of boys now is way harder than it was a decade ago and way harder than it was 20 years ago. Do you agree with that? And why?
Let me go back. You said first, way harder than a decade ago. Okay.
Yeah.
So a decade ago is really when I was in the trenches. Right now, my youngest is 20. So a decade ago, he was 10. My oldest is now 28. So a decade ago, he was 18. So I was right in that teen mess a decade ago. For me, I think one of the biggest challenges that has changed and made it more difficult now than then, two things. I actually think there is simultaneous to us collectively expressing more concern about boys and young men. I feel like there's also increasing intolerance for boys and young men when they say and do stupid things, especially sexism, misogyny, racism. And to be clear, I am anti all of those things. I don't support sexism. I don't support misogyny. I don't support misandry. I don't support racism. However, young boys say and do stupid things. That is part of the learning process, part of the growing process. So I feel like they feel like they are under a microscope all of the time, because they are, when everybody has a phone and can put up anything at any moment. There's that. And then there is the social media online world as it exists today, where a boy today, he's going to be online. Whether you let him or not, he is going to be online. And because of the way the algorithms is built, whether he goes looking at it or not, he will be exposed to extreme thoughts a la Andrew Tate. And I'm using the term manosphere because a lot of people know kind of what we mean by that.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that term is helpful because a lot gets lumped into that. But extreme views and very unhelpful body image and expectations and gambling content, all of this stuff is being fed to our boys. And that's why I think parenting boys now is even harder. Like, all of the external world is literally reaching into their bedrooms and minds all of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, you have access to a lot more opinions and a lot more potentially false data than I had when I was a kid, right? The information diet was a lot more curated. And so now it's a lot less curated, which is nice because you have access to things that, there's not a gatekeeper. but it also means that you have to be that much more vigilant about what you're putting into your mind. And at a point, at a time when you're really susceptible um, to unhelpful ways of thinking that are not gonna serve you long term.
Because you are at a point in time when you are actively searching for ideas and testing out ideas and identity
Yeah.
and developmentally appropriately, trying to differentiate yourself from your parents and testing, maybe their value system is not my value system.
Right.
And that's healthy to a point.
But then we're also in this situation where everything goes on your permanent record. So you try on some marginally unhelpful point of view, like, some kind of, I like something that would come across as misogynist to some people,
Yep.
but not to other people, right? It's,
Yep.
and it used to be the case when I was in college that you might try something like that on, and the culture would gently push back on you. And now it feels like, okay, no, you're pushing the edge of the herd. Like the one tiny little misstep, and you're sort of done for. And so then that creates this. I mean, it creates this situation where you either have to be hyper conformist to everything. You have to sort of predict what people might get offended about, right? Because offense is in the eye of the beholder in that respect. Or you can go the other way and just be, okay, well, I'm gonna make being offensive part of my identity.
Right.
And I mean, that can't be
That's not
what we
healthy.
want.
Nope.
So, and I feel like mothers have a particular role in helping our boys temper their role. And and I think that's where mothers come in, is helping our boys try things out in a way that is protected. And the venues that they can do that are shrinking, right? I mean, if you're always on, if everything you do is recorded, then you can't, then you don't really have freedom.
And personally, I think that pressure is contributing to why a lot of boys and young men aren't doing much of anything,
Yeah.
right? It is easier to stay still and not take risks and just stay in my room and play video games
Yeah.
than to do something that could get me in trouble. Nope, I'm opting out of all of that.
Yeah. So do you think do you see that that's what's happening?
I have a theory that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't have, swaths of data necessarily to prove it, but I think those correlations are there, right? Like we are seeing increasing numbers of boys and young men who are out of education, out of work, who are really being pretty static in their lives, which isn't
Yeah.
healthy for them, and it is not healthy for our communities.
Right. Yeah. One of the things I like to say is that our culture thirsts for healthy men. And we're it seems it seems empirically true that we're creating fewer of them.
Yes. So we're at
And
this point where we thirst for healthy men, but we're not really investing in the things that build healthy
yeah,
men. And I'm not just talking about money. Certainly money is part of it because resources, but time and space and freedom, like we're not building the things that help boys become healthy men.
yeah, let me restate that in a way that I could definitely agree with, which is that the institutions that used to do that for us are gone or are crumbling. And so it is up to us to do it ourselves now. And we're not necessarily going to do that unless we're intentional about it.
And this is where moms especially and dads also, right? We are feeling all of this pressure.
Yeah.
We are feeling this pressure to raise good men. And absolutely, it is part of our responsibility. It's a lot. It's a lot to do on our own. So I feel like the society at large is kind of looking at parents like, raise a good man, but sort of keeping their hands off, and also judging parents as they are also doing their best to function in the society without enough accurate information or support. And that's a frustrating position for parents to be in. And I think that that is part of why parents, and especially parents of boys, feel this tension and this stress. They feel this expectation. I think parents of boys, at least the moms that I speak to, and I'll let you tell me what you hear from the dads, are very aware of this acute pressure to raise a good man. And just as the boys feel like that microscope is on them if they do a misstep, the moms feel that is on them too, that if my son does this thing, eyes are looking back at me. Well, why didn't you do better?
I absolutely see that, and I think that there's a dad's version of that too. Um, and it has a lot less to do with conforming to social norms. In my experience, it has a lot less to do with that than it is about performing well, like being good at sports or or doing well at schoolwork and those sorts of things. Like
Sure.
I feel that if my son isn't succeeding on the basketball court, then I have done something wrong as a dad. So I don't know if that's a generalized experience or if that's just mine. Um, but that's definitely there. Do you I think one of the other things that makes it really, really difficult, and I'd love your feedback on this for moms today, is that there, for the reasons that we've discussed, there are fewer and fewer really good masculine role models. And it is impossible for a mother to be a masculine role model. Um, I mean, certainly mothers can have, you know, can exhibit masculine virtues, but your son is not going to see that for as a model for himself. He needs that difference. He needs to see a man doing stuff he admires so that he can emulate that. And those men are becoming fewer and farther between. And so what is a mom to do? If, you know, oftentimes, so in a lot of families, you have a mother and a father, and the father can be that good masculine male role model. Okay, great. We've got one, but
Right.
you know, we might need more. And in a lot of cases these days, you have moms raising sons without a father, or without a father in the home. And so she needs to seek out other masculine male role models. What do you know, how, and then obviously there's risks on the other side of that, right? You know, you might be suspicious of somebody that's taking an interest in your young boy reasonably. How do you navigate that minefield, in your opinion?
I don't have any easy answers to that because there are no easy answers to that. You're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of the previous institutions that existed to do that don't exist in the same form anymore. We know broadly speaking, like there's less community clubs and just less community gatherings. There's fewer mentoring programs. All of those things are true. And the question for moms that are looking for other adults to be interested in and care about their sons, I hear from those moms all the time. And you give the standard answers and it feels incomplete because you know that the world's not ideal. So
Yeah.
yes, there's the obvious places. Ideally, hopefully, perhaps you have extended family, you know, uncles or older cousins, and it doesn't necessarily have to be people that you are biologically related to. Aunts, uncles, cousins, can also be people in your neighborhood, in your church, in your community, other people that see and spend time with your child. But getting somebody to actually take an interest in your child, to spend time with your child, that can be really hard. As you said, there are fewer male teachers now than there were when we were in school, and especially in those early elementary stages.
Right.
This is pause. One thing I want to touch on is this suspicion that is there, right? We, and especially moms, do tend to be suspicious of men who show an interest in our boys. And there are reasons for that. There have been horrible stories of abuse and grooming, and we are all acutely aware of those. And our first priority as parents is to protect our children. So be aware of that. But I think deliberately interrogate that inclination within yourself. I feel like there is this, the first reaction is suspicion instead of appreciation. The first reaction is, if there is a guy who shows interest in my child, that it is automatically a bad thing. And it isn't necessarily. You have to do your due diligence. But don't assume the worst without reason, I think is thing one I want to say. Question your own biases, your own prejudices. Second of all, a man does not have to be a perfect man to be a good, healthy, masculine influence for your son. And I ran across a beautiful essay about this a few years ago, and I would have to dig really hard to find it again. But it was written by an adult man, but he was talking about some of the men who helped raise him. And one was like somebody in his community, and the guy had a lot of issues. He was a drunk, he was, these things. But he made time, and he spent time, and he listened to this boy when he was a teenager. What I mean is, a man does not have to check all of the perfect guy 2026 boxes to be a good influence for your son. Yep, he can swear. Yes, he may even have some values that you don't like. He may occasionally say derogatory things about people. That doesn't mean he can't be a good influence in other ways. My best advice to parents who are looking for masculine influence for your boy, whatever your boy is interested in, try to go places where other people are interested in those things. For my oldest son, one of those things was fishing, right? And when he was about 10, I think, and he specifically loves muskies. The muskellunge is like the state fish of Wisconsin. It is a big fish. It's like a huge northern pike, very similar. There was a Muskie Expo trade show that was going on in Milwaukee, about an hour from our home. He wanted to go to that. Sean, I don't like fishing. That's not my thing at all,
Me
but
neither.
it's my kid. We went to that together. This 10-year-old boy was in heaven. And so were the predominantly adult men who saw in this boy somebody that was interested in what they were interested in. And so even though none of those men became like regular influences in his life, in that day, he saw and met many people doing different things that kind of showed him what could be possible. And they, importantly, showed an interest in him. And I think you can speak to that as a former boy and as a father. When an adult man kind of sees and affirms your spark, that's powerful, isn't it?
Really, really powerful. It is the most powerful thing. And I think, I'll call out something. You made reference to this, but you didn't drive it home as hard as I think it deserves, which is this thing about you don't have to be the perfect man to be a good role model. That's absolutely right. And not only that, your imperfections are also instructive. Yeah. And so like the boy gets to see that. The boy gets to see an actual real live man in real circumstances deal with real things and succeed or fail on his own merits. And the more examples of that you see, the more well-rounded you could be as a boy. If you don't see that in real live men, you're going to look for proxies. You're going to look for TV shows. You're going to look for online influencer personalities. And those are curated feeds. They are not healthy ways of getting those skills. They're performatives. They're performances. And they're better than nothing, I guess, sometimes. But the real thing is the real thing. It is, and getting that rich experience is, that's where the gold is. And if you're searching for perfection, you're letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, and you end up with nothing.
I really appreciate you elaborating on that. You're right. The imperfection is so, so important. None of us are done. We're all still dealing with our stuff. So for a boy to see a human adult male living with his imperfection and how the world responds to him positively or negatively, really, really helpful. And broadly speaking, the more men, the more people in your son's life, the better. Because he doesn't just need a masculine role model. He doesn't just need to see men. He needs to see a variety of men.
Yeah.
Because there are so many different and beautiful ways of being a man in the world. And it gives him that opportunity to realize there's no one right way, which I think is one of the lies that the internet is kind of selling our boys right now. Like, this is the way to be a man.
Right. Yeah. And then you'll see another one. Oh, this is the way, and this is the way, and this is the way. And there's 1,000 the ways. And, but yeah, those are kind of, the internet is kind of a grift mill, right? And there's, you can get rich making the world worse.
And given that is our world, that is a conversation that we all have to have with our sons these days.
It'd be nice if it weren't that way. And
it would.
But we have to recognize the world, the way it is, not the way it ought to be. And we have to deal with the culture the way it is, and the world the way it is, and the internet the way it is, and the social media the way it is. Yeah. And from the last time you were here, I always like to finish these conversations by asking more or less the same question of everybody. And so I'm going to put you on the spot for a second time. What is one principle that you think that comes to mind when I ask you what every parent listening should think about when trying to raise excellent men?
Really wish I'd studied harder for this one, Sean. I should have known you were going to ask this
You
again.
should have known. You should have known. Oh, last time he asked me for this thing. But you can take your time, and it is not a timed exam.
Connect with the boy in front of you. Connect with the boy in front of you. And what I mean by that is look at him and respond to him and his needs and his interest in the moment. And I think that is foundational because that is the thing that you can carry from his infancy all the way through to his adulthood. Because even though it's the same human, he will change.
Yeah.
He will change so many times in so many beautiful ways. And so, yes, you can and I will say should listen to podcasts and read books and learn more about what our boys are experiencing and learn about their development, because building that knowledge will help you be able to effectively respond. But your absolute best guide for raising a good man is to look at and respond to that boy in front of you.
I love that. Well, the book is called Building Boys, Raising Great Guys in a World That Misunderstands Male. I really recommend it wholeheartedly. To be candid, I haven't read the whole thing. I haven't quite finished it yet, but I have read a large portion of it, and it is really, really, really good. Jennifer L.W. Fink, thank you so much for joining us again on Raising Men. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Sean.
And to everybody who's listening, the links to all of Jennifer's, her podcast and the book and all of those things. They're in the show notes. Please check them out. She's absolutely fantastic, as you can see. And it'll give you the tools to communicate better and connect better with your boys. And as always, thank you for listening to Raising Men. Thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, and sharing us with your friends. It is really an honor to serve you in this way. And remember that you are a great parent. Raising Men is produced by Phil Hernandez. This episode was edited by Ralph Tolentino.